Politicians involved in the Donald Trump impeachment inquiry have requested testimony from a key White House staffer on Monday. Robert Blair is a senior advisor to the acting White House chief of staff, but his lawyers say that he won't be appearing. It comes as the House of Representatives prepares to hold public hearings after formalizing impeachment proceedings against the president last week. It centers on whether Trump abused his power by withholding aid to Ukraine in exchange for an investigation into political rival Joe Biden. Al Jazeera's Heidi Jo Castro is live for us now in Washington. So, will he, won't he? Is Blair going to appear, Heidi?
Well, Adrian, everything is set up and waiting for Blair at the Capitol, but all signs are that he will be a no-show today. And not just him, but 3 other administration officials, everyone scheduled to testify today, expected to defy the congressional subpoenas. Now, these witnesses are not the essential ones that Democrats are really resting their case upon. These are more the rank-and-file employees who may be useful in connecting the dots further on this big question of why the White House back in July withheld foreign aid to Ukraine, and also why officials there buried the information about a phone call in which President Trump asked the leader of Ukraine to launch investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden, who is a 2020 presidential contender. Now, the fact that no one is heeding those subpoenas today is indicative of this firewall strategy that the White House has been employing, that it's working now after 4 weeks of incredible momentum otherwise, in which Democratic investigators heard from more than a dozen witnesses, both former and current administration officials, who had consistent testimonies that they were all concerned about this phone call and that the money that the U.S. had already decided to give to Ukraine, about $400 million to help it defend itself against Russia, that the money was the hinge on which that was this decision, this request for the investigations into Trump's political rivals was resting. President Trump has been reportedly enraged by what he sees as the betrayal of these other witnesses who have defied the White House orders and appeared in Congress anyway. And we saw more of that rage this morning in his tweet, saying that there was, quote, no reason to summon more witnesses because his phone call was, in the president's words, perfect.
So what can Congress do to press forward with its inquiry if witnesses continue to refuse to show up?
Right. Well, they could hold these witnesses in contempt of Congress, which really hasn't been done in modern times. It could be fines or jail time, but we simply haven't seen that play out. More likely is that Democrats could file a lawsuit against these no-show witnesses, but the court process is so long that likely there would be no final decision until next year, perhaps just before the presidential elections. And then there's the other argument that some say the case against Donald Trump is already damning enough with those witnesses who have already appeared, who have shared that consistent testimony that they were concerned about what they saw as this shadow policy toward Ukraine, which prioritized the president's personal political agenda over the national security of the country. And you can see the strength of that case really in the Republicans' response itself, in the efforts to defend the president, rather than addressing the merits or the substance of this case against Trump. We've been seeing more of Republicans attacking the credibility of the witnesses and saying that this entire process is a sham. Adrian.
Al Jazeera's Heidi Jo Castro live there in Washington. Many thanks indeed. Now let's take a look at what's expected to happen with the inquiry over the next few days. A lawyer for the whistleblower who first raised concerns about President Trump's Ukraine dealings says that his client is ready to answer written questions from House Republicans. Now that would let them make inquiries without going through the impeachment inquiry or the House Intelligence Committee chairman. At least 6 White House insiders have made it known that they'll ignore subpoenas to testify. Trump's former national security advisor John Bolton is due to testify on Thursday, but his lawyer says that he won't appear unless he's subpoenaed. Transcripts of witness testimony are expected to be released soon. There's no date yet for the start of the public hearings, which will follow the current closed-door hearings. Clyde Wilcox is a professor of government at Georgetown University. He joins us now live from Washington. Professor, good to have you with us. So the White House says it's not going to cooperate with this investigation. As far as today goes, can Blair be compelled to appear?
Not easily. I think he probably can't be forced to come. And the people in the White House are really hard cases to get, right? People who were in the foreign policy establishment, military people, they have a little independence, but people working in the White House for Office of Management and Budget, those are tough witnesses to get.
So it's Mick Mulvaney, the White House Chief of Staff, who's behind the blocking of appearances here, isn't it? I mean, could this lead to an obstruction of justice charge against him or the president?
Yeah, it could. I mean, we already saw 10 cases of obstruction of justice in the Mueller report, so nothing really came of that. But sure, they could do that. Mulvaney's job is a little insecure, and of course he testified, or he spoke, that there was a quid pro quo and then took it back. So he's in a little bit of a shaky position. He's trying to consolidate his internal standing in the White House by having all the people in his network not testify.
So where does this leave House Republicans? Do they buy into the president's argument that this is a sham? It's all about the election?
You know, some of them do, but privately, most of them don't, no. Privately, many of them are deeply concerned about what happened, and they've shifted their talking points to, yes, it was wrong, it was a mistake, but it's not impeachable, or yes, there's always conditions put on foreign aid. This is an inappropriate condition, but it's not illegal. But interestingly, about 13 House Republicans had been signaling that they might be willing to support the vote last week. None of them did. So they certainly have circled the wagons on this, and they're going to fight the impeachment all the way, it seems.
And what about the whistleblower? President Trump was tweeting earlier this morning saying that he's not a whistleblower, he's a political operative, or he's got a political agenda here. Is his identity for the moment safe?
Well, we hope so. I mean, that's the whole point of whistleblower laws, and what Trump is doing here is deeply inappropriate, because we need people to be willing to come forward and share their information. And everything the whistleblower said turns out to be verified by multiple other witnesses. So I think the House honestly has all the information it really needs. What the people from OMB could tell them would just be filling in tiny little details in the storyline. So we already know the broad outlines of what Trump did, and it's impeachable.
And what about the whistleblower's lawyer saying that his client is offering to answer written questions submitted by House Republicans, which would let them make inquiries without going through the impeachment inquiry or the House Intelligence Committee chairman? I mean, how significant is that?
Well, I think that's good. I mean, I think that's an important thing. He's basically signaling a willingness to be questioned, but not a willingness to give up the identity. And I think that's protecting the witness is an important thing. So,
always good to talk to you, Professor. Many thanks indeed. Clyde Wilcox there from Georgetown University.